The retreat of the revolution in 1906-1907 and the reasons for its defeat. Following the defeat of the Moscow uprising began a strip of unbridled bloody terror. Having concluded a shameful peace with Japan with the assistance of the American imperialists, the Tsarist government sent the main forces of its troops to suppress the revolution. All the dark forces of bourgeois landlord Russia have united around the black banner of the enemies of the revolution for merciless reprisal against its participants. In cities, a Black Hundred was rampant, receiving every possible support from the military and police authorities. Through villages, like hordes of foreign invaders, scavenged punitive expeditions. Many thousands of workers and peasants were shot and hanged by the Tsarist authorities. Despite the ferocious terror, the workers and peasants did not lay down their arms. This is eloquently evidenced by the following data. During 1906, 1,108,000 workers took part in these strikes, and during the year 1907, 740,000. In the countryside, however, the scope of the peasant movement reached an even greater breadth in 1906 than in 1905, half of the counties of Russia. All this shows that, despite the defeat of the December armed uprising, the struggle continued. Workers retreated slowly, with fights. These rearguard battles of the workers and peasants frustrated the government's calculations to obtain in the person of the State Duma an obedient organ to combat the revolution. In the conditions of the ongoing revolution, the workers insistently demanded the convening of a unification congress of the RSDLP in order to put an end to the organizational disunion of the party. Lenin was for the unification of the Bolsheviks with the Mensheviks. However, he believed that unification could only be lasting if and only if it took place on the principles of revolutionary Marxism. Under the pressure of the workers, the Mensheviks agreed to the convening of the Fourth Congress of the RSDLP, which was held in April 1906 in Stockholm. There was no real unification at this Congress, since the Mensheviks continued to defend opportunist positions on all issues of the Russian Revolution. At the Congress an acute struggle began between the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks on the agrarian question. Lenin proposed an agrarian program that provided for the confiscation of landed estates, and the nationalization of all land in the country. These measures have long been put forward by the whole course of Russia's economic development. The Lenin program on the solution of the agrarian question was designed to resolutely and completely eradicate all remnants of serfdom and feudal exploitation, to meet the immediate needs of the peasants. The Mensheviks put forward a reactionary program of municipalization, that is, the transfer of landlords' land to the disposal of local self-government bodies, zemstvos, which were to be rented out to peasants. This program was based on the recognition of the Prussian type of capitalist development of agriculture, as the only possible for Russia. The Menshevik program recognized as inviolable landlord estates in which the economy was conducted in a capitalist manner. It provided for the establishment of plots of landlord land not subject to alienation. It, in fact, did not even raise the question of the destruction of private property on land. If the Leninist agrarian program was designed for the deepest agrarian revolution, the program of municipalization expressed the Menshevik line for a deal with the landlords and the bourgeoisie. Taking advantage of their majority, the Mensheviks dragged, with some amendments and additions, a reactionary program of municipalization of the land. On the question of the attitude towards the Duma, the Fourth Congress of the RSDLP adopted a resolution proposed by the Mensheviks, who viewed the Duma as the embodiment of popular representation. The Menshevik resolution adopted by the Congress on an armed insurrection was, in effect, directed against the insurrection. After the Congress, the struggle between the genuinely revolutionary part of the party and its opportunist wing unfolded with renewed vigor. The Mensheviks, after the Cadets, considered the revolution to be over. They condemned the armed action of the Moscow proletariat in December 1905, and deterred the workers from revolutionary actions. After the defeat of the Moscow uprising, the Mensheviks moved even closer to the camp of the counter-revolution, moving further away from the working class. The Bolsheviks continued to strengthen ties with the proletarian masses. They directed all the revolutionary actions of the working class, tirelessly exposing the counter-revolutionary essence of the cadets and the opportunism of the Mensheviks, who sowed constitutional illusions among the masses. The Bolsheviks tirelessly explained to the workers that the Duma had nothing to do with the actual people's representation, that the Tsar had convened to deceive the people, pursuing the only goal, with its assistance to stifle the revolution, that Tsarism would not tolerate a genuinely popular Duma. As if in support of the words of the Bolshevik agitators, in the summer of 1906, i.e., just a few months after the opening of the Duma, the Tsar issued a manifesto on its dissolution, appointing new elections. Dissolving the first Duma and appointing new elections, the Tsarist government hoped to receive in the person of the second Duma an obedient tool of its reactionary policy. However, this time it miscalculated. To Duma was even more opposition than the first. In the conditions of the recession of the revolution, the Bolsheviks abandoned the boycott tactics that they conducted against Bulegin and the First Duma. They took an active part in the elections to the Second Duma, using election commissions widely for revolutionary agitation. Lenin worked out the Duma tactic that envisaged the formation in the Duma of a revolutionary bloc of the RSDLP with the Trudoviks and other revolutionary democratic elements. The agrarian question occupied a central place, and in the Second Duma, the Trudoviks and Social Democrats, the latter had 65 mandates, demanded the confiscation of the landed estates. Since the Mensheviks, with whom the Bolsheviks formed a single faction in the Duma, stood on opportunist positions on the attitude of the RSDLP to non-proletarian parties, the Bolsheviks brought this extremely important question to the discussion of the next Fifth Party Congress. Consistently revolutionary line of the Bolsheviks contributed to the fact that after the IV Party Congress the ranks of the Bolsheviks increased significantly, while the Mensheviks lost many of their supporters. Therefore, in contrast to the IV Congress of the RSDLP, on which the majority belonged to the Mensheviks, at the Fifth Congress, held in May 1907 in London, the Bolsheviks predominated. In a fierce struggle against the Mensheviks, the Congress adopted Bolshevik resolutions on all the main issues on the agenda. The Congress gave a clear indication of the attitude of the RSDLP towards reactionary, Black Hundred, liberal bourgeois and petty bourgeois parties. Proceeding from this attitude, the Bolsheviks, after the Fifth Congress, launched an even more decisive struggle both against the frank reactionary Black Hundred parties and against the cadets, unceasingly exposing their false democracy and conciliation with Tsarism. This struggle undermined the influence of counter-revolutionary and reactionary parties on the masses of the working class and the peasantry. However, the further the revolution receded, the stronger the onslaught of the counter-revolution was made. Government repression was supplemented by lockouts, the massive dismissal of workers, the offensive of the bourgeoisie on the vital interests of the working class. On June 1, 1907, the chairman of the Council of Ministers, Stolypin, challenged the Second Duma to exclude the entire Social Democratic faction from the Duma, and on June 3 the Tsar announced a manifesto on the dissolution of the Second Duma. Simultaneously, a new electoral law was declared, which further restricted the electoral rights of the working masses. Having signed this law, the Tsar crushed his solemn promise not to issue any laws without the consent of the Duma, given to them in the manifesto on October 17. Dispersal of the Second Duma meant a coup d'état, followed by a period of black reaction. The revolution of 1905–1907 was defeated. The main reason for the defeat of the revolution was that it failed to unite the workers, peasants and soldiers into a single revolutionary stream. The union of the working class and the peasantry was not yet strong enough. The most significant speeches of the peasants occurred at a time when large centers of revolution and industrial centers were already suppressed. The peasants' monarchical illusions were conditioned by the fact that the greater part of the army, consisting mainly of peasants, acted together with Tsarism, helping the government to suppress strikes and insurrections. An important role in the defeat of the revolution was played by the fact that the workers themselves were not organized enough. While the advanced sections of the working class courageously and amicably rose to the struggle in 1905, the more backward ones were swinging slowly and emerged when the vanguard of the working class was already considerably weakened. The defeat of the revolution was facilitated by the lack of unity in the ranks of the party of the working class. While the Bolsheviks pursued a consistent line for the all-round deepening and development of the revolution, the Mensheviks hampered the deployment of the revolution by their conciliatory policies, undermined the unity of the working class, and weakened its onslaught on the autocracy. This line of the Mensheviks prevented the proletariat from becoming the real leader of the revolution. In addition, the Tsarist government was strangled by the bourgeoisie of Western European countries, who feared for their investments in Russia, as well as the fears that the waves of the People's Revolution would not overwhelm other capitalist countries. The active participation of a number of imperialist states in suppressing the First Russian Revolution showed that the imperialist bourgeoisie of Western Europe and the United States of America became the mainstay of international reaction.